It doesn't start with an explosion. It starts with small things failing at once. A light, a signal, a traffic system, an airport screen, and suddenly, normal life doesn't feel normal anymore. That's what makes this dangerous, because the source isn't on the ground. It's above Earth, hitting the satellites and signals modern life depends on every day. And once those systems start to slip, the danger isn't just what goes dark, it's how much of the world keeps moving before anyone realizes the whole system is starting to fail. This isn't some brand new nightmare. Earth has been hit by solar violence before. The difference now is the kind of world it would hit. Back then, the damage was terrifying. Today, it would rip through a civilization built on signals, timing, automation, and constant connection. Which means this stops being a space story very quickly. It becomes a story about homes, hospitals, transportation, money, and the hidden systems holding everyday life together. And here's the part most people miss. The flickers, the signal drops, the unstable satellites. That may not be the disaster. That may only be the warning shot. It begins on the sun, not like a movie scene, but as a real burst of energy, violent enough to launch a storm into space. And once that happens, we're not just talking about light anymore. We're talking about a fast-moving wave of charged energy heading straight for the systems above Earth. That's where the first damage begins. Not with fire, not with explosions, but with precision, breaking down inside the machines we trust to stay exact. And the moment that precision slips, navigation gets weaker, signals get dirtier, timing gets unstable, and the disruption starts moving from orbit into daily life. Which means by the time people on the ground realize something serious is happening, the first hit has already landed, and the real damage may only be beginning. The first systems to really take the hit are the ones above us, not because they explode, but because they stop being exact. And once that happens, the first thing people feel is confusion. Navigation drifts, positioning gets weaker, movement keeps going, but with less trust behind it. In aviation, that matters fast, because flying doesn't depend on drama. It depends on precision that people rarely notice until it starts slipping. And it's not just about movement, it's also about awareness. The systems watching the planet start getting weaker right when the world needs clarity most. Then the signals get dirtier, timing gets less stable, communication gets rougher, and more of modern life starts working badly at the same time. Which means if satellite failure already creates this much friction, then this isn't the disaster, it's the part that comes before the ground starts taking the real hit. Then the pressure reaches something even bigger, the grid. Not as one dramatic collapse, but as a system taking on stress it was never built to absorb cleanly. At first, the signs look small. A city rhythm slips, a signal stays dark too long, a service stalls, and suddenly the infrastructure around you feels less certain than it did 5 minutes ago. But power isn't just about lights, it's hospitals, water, emergency systems, the machines people trust when things absolutely have to keep working. Then daily life starts to feel it. Payments hesitate, fuel gets harder to reach, simple routines stop feeling simple, and normal life starts picking up friction everywhere. And behind that, something worse is forming, because the systems feeding entire cities also run on electricity, timing, and coordination. So even before shelves go empty, the flow behind them is already tightening. That's when the story changes, because once power stops feeling reliable, the question is no longer what goes dark, it's how much of normal life was only stable because the grid never blinked. Most people think the internet dies all at once, like a switch, on, then gone. But that's not the scary version. The scary version is when it still works, just badly. One place still has signal, another goes blind, and suddenly the world stops sharing the same picture. Then money starts feeling strange, payments hesitate, verification slows, digital trust starts slipping. And now it gets worse. Some people get updates, some get fragments, some get nothing useful at all. That's how panic really starts, not with screaming, with waiting, guessing, and not knowing what still works. And that's the twist. A broken internet is most dangerous when it stays alive just enough to keep the confusion spreading. The blackout isn't the whole disaster. It's the moment people realize they no longer know what still works. Then movement gets farther, fuel slows down, access gets uncertain, and suddenly even leaving feels less simple. Then the stores start changing, not empty yet, just different enough to make people buy like something worse is coming. Emergency systems keep moving, but slower, rougher, with less certainty behind every response. And now the fear changes shape, because the problem isn't just failure, it's not knowing what's temporary, what's spreading, and what comes next. In hospitals and essential care, things may still be running, but the margin for error starts getting smaller. The city keeps moving. That's what makes it unsettling. Life doesn't stop, it just gets harder to hold together. And that's when the real collapse begins. Not when the lights first fail, but when people keep living after the systems under normal life stop feeling solid. And this is where the fear gets heavier, because systems can fail fast, but they don't come back fast. The grid isn't an app, it's physical, heavy, and once it takes a real hit, you can't just restart it. Then recovery starts breaking apart too. One place comes back, another stays weak, and normal life returns in pieces. Even the repair takes time. Crews, parts, transport, replacement, all of it depends on systems already under pressure. And turning things back on isn't enough. Modern life runs on timing, coordination, clean synchronization, and those are harder to rebuild than people think. Which means recovery won't feel fair. Some places get pieces of life back early, others stay trapped inside the delay. And then the crisis changes again. It stops feeling like an event and starts feeling like a condition people have to live through. So the question is no longer just whether the lights go out. It's how long modern life can keep working when the systems under it come back too slowly. By the end, this stops feeling like a story about outages. It starts feeling like a story about how much of normal life was never as solid as it looked. Because power, signals, timing, transport, payments, care, all of it works quietly in the background until one day it doesn't. And the sun isn't attacking us like an enemy. That may be the most unsettling part. It doesn't need to hate us to hurt us. Which means this was never just about satellites or the grid. It was about people, living inside systems too complex to fail gently. And maybe that's the real warning. Not that the world ends in one day, but that modern life may be far less ready for invisible shock than it wants to believe. Because civilization depends on strength alone. It depends on continuity, precision, and thousands of hidden things going right at the same time. So, if the sun hit hard enough, the question may not be whether the world survives. It may be how long normal life still feels normal after the invisible systems underneath it stop holding.